Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're peeling back the layers on the NHS to look at something that's, well, it's a trap. A system that can put both patients and their doctors into a truly impossible spot. So let's kick things off with a question that honestly sounds a bit crazy. How on earth can a system that's all about providing care end up incentivizing its refusal? And look, the answer isn't about blaming individual doctors, not at all. It's about the machine, the system itself that they're caught in.
Okay, to really get our heads around this, there's a key idea we need to talk about. It's called the governance trap. And what is that? Well, you can think of it as a built-in conflict, a clash that's been basically engineered right into the system. It puts administrative rules and money on one side and a doctor's legal, ethical duty to their patient on the other, a real tug of war.
All right, so to see how this trap actually works in practice, we've got to do what you always do, right? Follow the money. Let's look at the financial engine that's really driving all of this. And this whole part of the story, it really starts with just one number, 49%. See, after the big Health and Social Care Act back in 2012, this became the brand new limit, the cap, on how much money NHS foundation trusts could earn from private patients. And trust me, this was a massive, massive change. And what did that do? Well, it created this huge incentive. All of a sudden, it made perfect business sense for hospitals to take their best resources, we're talking senior consultants, operating rooms, beds, all the stuff funded by your taxes, and point them towards private patients who pay a premium. And right there, that's the beginning of the two-tier system we hear about. It's where you end up paying twice, once with your taxes, and then again out of your own pocket just to get access to the system you already funded. But believe it or not, it gets even weirder. The system literally creates financial rewards for withholding care. It's a practice some people call monetized denial of care. I mean, think about this. GPs can actually get paid a fee for not sending a patient to the hospital. Hospitals get bonuses for hitting savings targets, which sometimes means taking people off medicines they need. And get this, some contracts are set up so that taking on a new, really complex patient actually costs the provider money. It's a guaranteed financial loss.
And this table here, it just lays out that central conflict so clearly. Look on the left, that's the law, the professional duty. It says, make the care of your patient your first concern. Simple enough, right? But then look at the reality on the right, the administrative rule. GPs are not obliged to prescribe. And what's the consequence? Doctors are put in a position where they might have to refuse care just to avoid getting into trouble themselves. It's like these two columns are designed to be in a constant state of war.
Okay, so let's zoom in a bit. How does this trap actually snapshot on GPs, the doctors on the front line? This is especially true when it comes to managing complex medications. It all comes down to a single sentence. You find language like this in the official guidance for shared care agreements. And, when you first read it, it sounds perfectly reasonable. But this little sentence, this is the key. This is what springs the trap.
So here's the really crucial part. That wording, that opt-in clause, it does way more than just offer a choice. What it actually does is it allows the big institution, the hospital, the trust, to create a policy, and then it transfers all the legal risk, the entire liability for that policy onto the individual GP's license. The system protects itself, and the doctor is left completely exposed.
You can see how this creates a totally impossible situation for the GP. They're caught between a rock and a hard place. Do they follow their professional duty to protect the patient? Well, if they do, they risk getting in hot water for breaking local policy. Okay, so what if they follow the policy to protect their license? Then they risk being sanctioned by their regulator for abandoning a patient. It's literally a choice between two different ways their career can end. A classic catch-22. And the end result of all this is a state that's been called clinical paralysis. What that means is the system is set up so that the safest professional option for a doctor is often just to deny care, to say no. Not because it's the right thing for the patient, but because the risk of saying yes, the administrative risk, is just way too high. So let's pull back for a second. We've got a financial engine that actually rewards the denial of care, and we've got this administrative maze that pushes all the risk onto individual doctors. So the big question is, what's the human cost? What actually happens to patients when these two forces come together? Well, it leads to a practice known as off-rolling. And what that means is the patients who are the most complex and, let's be honest, the most expensive to treat are systematically discharged or moved off the main NHS books. They get shifted over to charities and other organizations that are often completely under-resourced. And why? to make the performance numbers look better and, critically, to free up capacity that can then be used for those more profitable private patients.
When you step back, the consequences they're pretty stark. You have a system where resources paid for by taxpayers are diverted to private care. The most vulnerable patients, the ones who need the most help, are basically pushed into a care vacuum. And what's the bottom line? Access to care starts to depend less on your medical need and more on your ability to pay. It brings us right back to that idea of paying twice, once in your taxes and again to find a way around the system's traps.
Which brings us to the final and maybe the most important piece of this whole puzzle. How can a system with such obvious flaws be allowed to just keep going? Who's actually in charge here? Who's accountable? Well, the root of the answer goes all the way back to that same 2012 law. Because that act did something huge. It removed the legal duty of the Secretary of State to actually provide or secure NHS services. Now, that might sound like a small bit of legal jargon, but it wasn't a minor tweak. It was a fundamental change in who is responsible for the health service. And that single change created what experts call the accountability vacuum. Responsibility got shattered into pieces, spread across all these different organizations. So what happens is, when everyone is a little bit responsible, it means no one person, no single organization is ultimately responsible when things go wrong and the system fails a patient. And that leaves us right here with the one question that really gets to the heart of all this. If the system is designed so that no one truly owns it, if there's no single point of accountability, then when a patient gets hurt because of this trap, who can we actually hold responsible for fixing it?